Welcome to the first ever The Elephant in the Room Womb podcast. Today, my guest is Kiren and our co-host is Raveen. Raveen has been in the Open project, sharing her experience about egg freezing from a woman from the British South Asian community, where it can sometimes be culturally a taboo to share your experiences, especially as there's not many experiences shared about egg freezing and cancer. So it's been great that she's been able to do that and also share in Huffington Post about stigmas and taboos in the British South Asian community, as sometimes people feel they haven't been able to share their views and experiences about how they feel about things coming from a different point of view. And also Kiren has been in an article on breast cancer care, talking about cancer and fertility issues, and how that impacted her. Feel free to write in or message me. Everyone's welcome, even if it's similar, because to me, every experience is slightly different. So now I'll let Raveen introduce herself.
So I'm 25 years old. I got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma back when I was 23. So I'm now currently going through my relapse. I'm in remission and I'll be going through my stem cell transplant in August. Oh, wow. So I was actually diagnosed at 23 and that's when the whole fertility question came about. Yeah. But yes, I've been going through the whole cancer situation for 2 years, coming over 2 years.
And I know that with the stem cell transplant, it's like me with the radiotherapy to the pelvis. It's kind of like a certainty that you probably will lose your fertility. Did they explain that to you? Or
not with the stem cell, but I froze my eggs back in September.
Okay.
So I've already done that. I've already handled that. So that's fine. And I'm also on an injection to protect my eggs.
Thank you.
Kiren, could you tell us a bit about yourself? I follow you on Instagram. I love your posts. You've got my way of thinking.
Have I? My name's Kiren. I'm 38 now, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 36. And I decided to start this Instagram post, stuff on there and stuff, because basically I felt like there wasn't very many people in the community who spoke about it, any sort of cancer really. And so I just thought, if I put how I feel on an Instagram, maybe there are other people who feel the same, who aren't able to talk about it, and they can reach out to me, or it just gives them the strength to kind of think, well, I can do it as well, and we don't have to keep it all behind closed doors, because it's one of those taboo subjects, isn't it? It's in the Asian community. Yeah. So,
and I think
Instagram account,
it's kind of hidden as well, isn't it? That even though they know, it doesn't always come up even in general with people. Do you find that quite hard, that even though sometimes we can get to the point where we can speak about it, that everyone else finds it kind of either not as important or representing you? Like all of us, we wanted our fertility saved, but sometimes there's not always someone there thinking, oh, let's do this for them as well, or that makes sense.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, because it's hard, with friends and family, even however supportive they are and stuff, and they're my family and friends have been amazing. It is difficult because there are things which seem little to them maybe, or haven't crossed their minds, which is massive, which are things that are really, really big, like fertility. When I first said, oh, I think I want to preserve my eggs, etc., then my sister said, no, do your chemo, and I got her point. You're sick, you need to deal with that first, and then what will be and all that kind of stuff. But actually those things are really, really important, when they were really, really important to me. So some people they're not, but there are certain things which are it was really important to me. So stuff like that.
It was interesting that you said that your sister said just go with the flow, it would work out, because the first time I got diagnosed, the chemo wasn't that aggressive, and so when I went to see a fertility consultant, I was very confused. It wasn't let me freeze my eggs, it wasn't that straightforward. But when I did leave, my mum was like, there will be a way, God will help you find the way, kind of. And I sat with that, and in my head I was like, that was the right choice for me then, not to freeze my eggs. It seemed right. I trusted my decision. But then when I did relapse, the chemo was more aggressive, and I couldn't trust God or find a way, because it's an insurance policy, right? So I was like, no, I'm going to freeze my eggs, because that's a peace of mind. It's just something that you sometimes just have to do.
100%.
God.
Yeah,
it worked out the time for me, but not now. I wouldn't leave it to God like that, because if there's a reason to, then obviously I would.
Yeah, and if you've got the ability to do it, then why not? See, they at the hospital, they didn't really talk about it. My oncologist, the surgeon at the beginning, and then afterwards the oncologist said to me, so, you know, this is your treatment plan. This is what we're going to do. Da 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 da. And you know, the chemo was quite aggressive, but he just said, but you could have fertility treatment if you'd like. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that another time. And then I was like, oh, and at that point for me, like, kids are like my life. Like, I really wanted to have kids. And I was like, oh, okay. But he just brushed over it. And then I was like, I said to him, well, what do you think? Do you think I should have it? Have I got time to have it? How does it work? And he was like, oh, well, to be honest with you, I would just get on with having the chemotherapy. And that's what he said to me. He was quite blasé, and he was like, he didn't have any children. Right. And to him and his wife, you know, through conversation, you could tell to him and his wife, children weren't important. Yeah. So if that was him on receiving, and maybe he would have gone, okay, cool. Yeah. So at that time I was like, okay, like, fine, I'll leave it. And, you know, it's true, I want to have my treatment. I want to be around. Like, you know, if I think about children and then I'm not going to be around, then what's the point? Because I won't have children and I won't be there. So that was my initial thought. And then it was when my surgeon said, he said he wanted to operate first. And he was like, well, do your operation, and then after 4 weeks, your chemo will start. I was like, okay. So that gives me the 3-week window opportunity to get my eggs frozen.
That's my pet hate. I wasn't offered it. They told me there wasn't enough time. Even though my cancer was aggressive, they made me wait, including waiting for the results, because they kind of messed up, over a month or so. And I thought I kind of used that time. And I can understand when people say, but you might die. And I can understand if you've got treatment in 2 days or less than a week. Exactly. I could totally understand that. But my mind was like, wait there, no one's thinking about, they think about other things, about this is important for you to survive. But my pet hate was like, they didn't see you as a person, that was important to you. We have and I was like, obviously you want to survive, but the way they were saying it was like, well, you survived now, so you know what's the problem? But I feel like, especially when there is time, there should be no excuse, male or female. And I know there are some cases where they, like you said, they rush them.
And that with my doctor, he wasn't very involved with it. He was just sending me to a fertility consultant, just like a tick box, like that. This is what we have to do. But it's not only, it wasn't until I actually went and sat down with a consultant where I was confused. I was like, this is a big decision. Never have I ever had to think, do I want kids? How badly do I want kids? And I think that's when it really opened up the door for me, where this is a big deal. And maybe it was how my doctor kind of introduced it, or gave a bit of a background, rather than just send me, tick the box and then deal with it if you want to or not.
100%.
I've become in remission 10 years, but left with lots of health problems. So I know I'm further away, but did you all kind of, with this coronavirus, was it a bit of a worry as a cancer patient, even if you're not at the top of risk, or were you okay with it when it first kind of came about to deal with?
So for me, I had a lot of anxiety, especially because with my own treatment, I'm on immunosuppressants, just had chemo, basically ticked all the boxes, have a blood cancer. So I literally ticked them all for a high risk patient. And I had so much anxiety, it was very crippling. But then it got to a point where I had to understand that I can't take on too much. And having cancer is hard enough. And then the mix of COVID.
I forgot that your high risk being for blood cancer and stem cell and things. Did anyone kind of come out, and who part of your team or anyone come out to support you or give you any advice? Or
so I got the usual GP letter, and then I got a phone call asking if I'm okay.
Oh, that's not too bad,
But then what are you meant to say? Like,
yeah, exactly that. So what are you supposed to say?
How much depth shall I go into? Because you've just called me
Yeah.
once. I haven't had that call again. And it's like, just fill in the survey just to make sure that you're okay. But it's very just like protocol, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Like, here again, a tick box thing.
Yeah.
They love it.
The standard.
See, I think that's the thing with the tip box, that you could give them something to say, like, I think you should do this for fertility and cancer, and they do it. But like you say, I always like you find they don't go into depth. So like you say, oh yeah, I'll have them in the team, but they don't speak about it or something like that. That's my bugbear. It's like, oh God, it's like
it's
sometimes
there, but it's not there.
It's the simplest things, you know, when you feel like there's other things you can't understand, and then you think, how does someone in that big team not put it together? I mean,
like, you're working in the healthcare sector, like we already have that problem when we're going through cancer, or we have, and people ask us how we are, and we're like, okay, how much depth do we go into it? Do we talk exactly about how we feel, or should we just be like, oh, I'm well, thank you.
I'm all right.
So with healthcare, you kind of understand, like, it's actually hard, you know, the ins and outs, right? So I do expect a lot more, like, of you, for you to listen, or for you to ask, rather than scrape the surface, you know?
100%. And it's always that, we've got like that 5-minute meeting, like appointment time, and the breast cancer unit's always full, and you know that, you know, you can see like they need to get you out of there like pretty quick. And it's just like, oh my God, but I've got like a notepad with questions on it because I don't know. And then it's just like, you end up resorting to Google. And I'm not gonna lie, like I ended up so many times going to Google, and then I'd join like a Facebook breast cancer group where I would just ask questions, because like it got to a point where I felt a bit silly, and like I was consuming the time of the doctor, and he wanted to just move on to the next person. He's already told me that. Next. And it was just like, no,
my mum always says, like, you know, when you take medication for pain and stuff like that, then you're very chatty, and it's like, Becki, calm it down. write the question down, like 5 million questions for them. So I can understand sometimes it might be hard for them, but at the same time it is hard, like when they're literally kicking you out and you could be depressed or anything, and you're like, oh, but what about
exactly what about this little thing? But you definitely need, like in the NHS, like, you know, when you are first diagnosed and they give you your treatment plans or whatever, something or somebody, like even if it's not a doctor, it's a nurse or whoever it is, that pulls every tiny part of it together and says, this is the way it's going to be, and this is what you can do, and this is the way, like, you know, like it's a full circle rather than let's deal with this, then deal with this, then deal with this. It needs to be linked, because it's your life is, you know, your life isn't in bits. Like, you're having the whole thing. You need it all to be one package where you can talk about, well, how's that bit going to affect that bit? How's that bit going to affect that? It should be like that.
So I go privately. I don't go through
Before I forget, I don't know if what they emailed me is right, but in your religion, do you believe in karma, or is that different?
We do, don't we, from Hinduism?
Because I think my one pet hate was, bless him, a man that I knew, a young Asian man. He sadly passed away from another tumour, but I think because he was originally from India, he thought maybe he had done something because of the karma. And I think my bugbear is, when you put that on anyone, it's like you haven't got a choice to choose.
You haven't got.
Does that make sense? And I think the charity said that they're not negative on that you did this, so you got that. But it's when society and you hear people.
It's a blame game, and it stops you 100%. From feeling the way that you actually feel, because you feel restricted. I'm not allowed to feel this way.
100%.
I've been punished, or there's always like this black magic, all this cursing.
All this like in the background, isn't there?
Like even mothers in our culture, they end up blaming themselves. What have I done wrong?
What have I done? That's 100% right. Because I know when I first got diagnosed, you know, like my dad's not like that so much, my mum very much is. Oh, what we've done, you know, and I'm like, Mum, you've got to relax. You've got to relax. Nobody's done anything. It's just, you know, there's been a mutation. I've got sick. I'm gonna get better. That's it. Like, you just have to give up this whole drama where, like, what we've done, it's not going to help you. It's actually just going to make you more depressed, you know?
I think that's the biggest thing. When I hear that, coming from my dad's Catholic faith, it's a similar thing where they can be religious but also believe in healers, which is you're not meant to do.
100%. It's a cult. Yeah, it's a culture v religion, isn't it? Like culture says, you know, like it should be like this or whatever.
It kind of goes off a bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's so culture v religion, 100%. And it's a mixture, isn't it? You go to the temple, it's a mixture between what you're supposed to do culturally or via religion. It gets all tangled up in little webs.
They're two very different things.
Our elders don't get that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense at all.
I think I kind of understand that, because I think my grandmother, she's not alive, but she is like that elder where they don't think like your parents, they don't think like you, and it's so hard. And it's like they're the kind of generation, but they'd say, if you looked a little bit of it, they'd say that, or, you know, it's not like your dad and your mom, and it's a bit slightly different. Yeah. So
that's it, exactly. And that's where the whole kind of like telling someone whether you've got cancer, telling someone whether you've had a miscarriage, telling someone even if you're getting married, oh, well, they might jinx it, or they might put nurture on it, or whatever it is. And it's like, people, like, if you're like, you can't live your life like that. You can't expect people to go through these things, you know, just in your home and stuff, and not be able to discuss it with anyone, just in case they might judge you, or they think, oh, well, she must have done something really bad in her life for her to be getting that. There's so much pressure on us.
It's real life at the end of the day, and it stops us from acting. It kind of makes us feel bad for being in
I totally understand
it's
that.
Guilt. 100%. It's a guilt trip. Go through so much as it is.
Yeah.
And then I think also in our culture, we've been brought up having to protect other people's feelings before ours.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, so because you have to respect your elders, you can't really say, well, actually, you know, when you respect someone so much, you can't say, well, actually, that if they don't understand, or you think, you know, they ain't going to know where I'm coming from, or I can understand that.
It's a difficult place, but that's where, like, I think, like, I was always one who was like, yeah, okay, you know, they wanted to get to my arranged marriage, yada yada, and then like introduced me to people, and I knew, like, from having spoken to them once or twice, that they weren't my cup of tea, but I'd have to go meet them, because out of respect and out of what will my parents say and all that kind of stuff. But that's why I decided when I got sick that no, we're not going to do this your way, and we're not going to do it the way in which the culture dictates we should do it. I'm going to do it my way, and that is it. And I've come out, like, definitely having learned a lot, and they've learned a lot from that as well. Like, now they discuss it with family, but not like, oh my god, she's dying, as in like, you know, like, it's always that kind of, you can't have a normal conversation about the illness without, you know, like an aunt bursting into tears, and exactly, like, oh my god, and it's like, can't we just talk about it?
And then you kind of build that up, that tension for the people you're not talking to,
for them. And also when they hug you for longer, as if you're about to go, and you like, it's very
it's very uncomfortable.
What you're thinking.
I think everyone's got a relative like that, like, you makes you feel like you're on your way out, and you're like, I've only just been diagnosed.
Like, there are treatments out there, but it's also like, I'm thinking, it's very like, I've always been quite anxious when I go to big family events and whatnot, because I know what you're thinking. You're just thinking cancer, like, oh, I feel sorry for her, that
exactly exactly, that's it. It's like the first thing that comes to me, like, oh, cancer, and it's like, oh, poor thing. It's like, no, go away, like, you know, it's not. Oh my god, I like that.
And also, do you think you know, like, with whether it's depression or the effects of, it's hard when, whether you have a job or you're out there trying to be professional in the sense to other people online, it's harder, even though we can speak about it sometimes, in general, people don't really like you to tell them there and then that you're very depressed or finding it hard. They usually like you to say after the fact, that makes sense. Like, it's very hard, I think, to pick up a thing and say you're suffering because you don't want people to think a certain way. And I think the mental health for any,
with the mental health,
I think mental health for any culture, also online, kind of, by saying be positive all the time, that's like the self-blame that you could do to yourself, thinking, well, I'm not like these patients, or why am I not? If that makes sense. And I think it comes back to the fertility, that if you had something that affected you emotionally, but people are saying, but you're alive, or, you know, you're okay, you're doing okay. I think that's the biggest thing that they put on people when it comes to fertility.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, but exactly, it's like, but you're here, and like, you know, you've got to think that, you know, you've got through it. And it's like, and it's even like, small, people think are small things. Like for me, like my weight gain is like massive. It's so big, like with the medication and stuff. And I know that, and all I get is like, but you've got through cancer, so this is like nothing. Yeah. And it's just like, no, because the medication is making me put on more weight, and I'm really struggling with it. And it's and first of all, you know, you lose your hair, you lose your eyebrows, you lose your eyelashes and everything. Then you're putting on weight, you feel like shit. And then afterwards, people tell you, oh, well, you've got through it, and you've got through cancer. Now, no, I just want to tell you that I feel like shit.
Yeah.
Because the weight is bothering me. Don't tell me that I should be like, you know, strong.
We agree, and it's like I shouldn't even be in this position in the first place. And you're
exactly.
You're telling me that in this position I should be grateful. I should be able to feel how I want to, because it's not fair that I'm going through all of this.
100%, 100%. And even when, like, you know, someone like my sisters are amazing, and they have been amazing. But I remember, like, I think it was a couple of months ago, obviously before lockdown. Literally about 2 weeks before lockdown, we went out on a night out with my girlfriends, and my sisters came around and whatever. We were getting ready, and my sister was just sitting there, and she was like moaning because she had like an eye infection or something, so she had to wear glasses. And so she was going on and on and on about it. And I was like, and then I said to her, I was like, you know, like, relax, it's okay, like it's just glasses, like you only have to wear it out once or twice or whatever, it's fine. And she was like, well, you don't understand. And I was like, mate, be going out bold for God knows how long. I do understand, and I wasn't saying it to her like I actually really do understand, because sometimes people make your issue so small that you feel a bit silly saying it. Like, you know, you feel a bit like, oh, well, I shouldn't really say that, because they're going to be like, oh, well, you've done this and you've done this, so why are you bothered about that? But it does bother you, and we are allowed to have those feelings. We're human.
Yeah.
It's like, it's annoying. I think that's my biggest bugbear. Like, people go, oh, it's fine, you're alive, you're doing well.
I think that's the kind of one they also, with if you're depressed, like, well, there's worse things going on, or people have cancer, and then you're like, well, actually I did, or it's that stereotypical of you have to one up the next person saying 100%. That this person. But I always think there's got to be, you know, sadly, people out there that have no health issues, and if no one committed suicide for no health issues, then that shows you that it could happen to anyone for any reason. It doesn't have to be, if that makes sense.
Like it totally makes sense. Like for me, I think like that's why, like, even with my Instagram account, it's not like, you know, sometimes I'm out and having the best time in the world and whatever, and I do, like, I'm really make sure now that I do enjoy my life, but it doesn't mean that I don't have my down days. And when I have my down days, I write about it, because I feel like I can't, not that I feel like I can't discuss it with my family, because I don't want to discuss it with my family, actually. Like, I don't want to sit there and go, oh, Phil, because my parents, although they're really great, there's only a level of there's only that certain level that they can actually understand. And like, you want to let people know that you can, you know, you can feel great one day and you can feel crap the other day, and and that doesn't have to be because you've had cancer or you've had this issue. It just happens, and you're allowed to have those feelings. And if you hide them all the time, then that's probably what you know, pushes people down the scary path.
Definitely. I think that's one of the hardest things, because even though we're okay to admit it, it's actually, what do others think? And it's the same. I think I've just got this, when I wrote the template about identity, that we can think who we are, but really it's what others think, if that makes sense. So coming back to identity and culture, I put that article, I don't know if you were able to see it, but it was basically talking about how it's mostly, infertility is kind of geared towards white women or middle class women, and the same when you said there wasn't many support groups that you're aware of or charities. Do you think, I don't even know if they know they're doing it, because I'm a bit odd. I did this booklet and I tried to be as inclusive, thinking if that was me, I'd want to be seen. But there is a lot of stuff
on the other side of it.
Until
we're on the other side of it, so it's quiet.
So until recently, do you think, until kind of Black Lives Matters and things like that about representation, do you think it wasn't really there, if that makes sense. Like, did you feel they were catering to you as much as the next person?
Yeah, I definitely think it's not there as much as it should be. Like, it's definitely and if it is, it's very much, you know, the one black person or the one Asian person or whatever it is, as they are there in the picture as just, you know, to make it look right. If you know what I mean. It's not right. It's a mixture of people. Doesn't matter who they are. It's just there. Like, you know, the campaign, and this is going to sound really rude, and I don't mean it to be rude. It's Spencer's, and you know, the fluffy pink breast cancer thing. And then then some of the girls, there was something brought out from that, the true cancer bodies or something along those lines. Yeah, like that. You know, there was a lot of people who were saying that they, you know, even in the true cancer bodies, a lot of ethnic, you know, minorities, they weren't included in that. And you could see from the pictures that they had ethnic minority people there, but they weren't, if you saw the final published stuff, they weren't in those pictures. And that just shows how, you know, I didn't...
Who's picking it up and identifying.
Yeah, exactly. And then you start noticing those things that you do, because when I was first diagnosed, I noticed straight away. And I just thought that was because, you know, maybe Asians don't get cancer that much.
Yeah.
That was what I thought. That was what I thought when I first got diagnosed, because I haven't heard about anyone apart from when I actually delved into it.
I do think they portray. I even thought, well, it's mostly aimed at kind of white middle class or upper class women getting certain cancers. Yeah.
You know, I only know about like white people that have cancer.
Yeah.
And that's all good. But when we're looking at things like fertility, I think it affects Asian women so much, because if you think about it, when I first had that talk about freezing my eggs, the first thing I thought about was, which is very foolish of me in hindsight, was what will my future partner think? And I wasn't even in a relationship. You know?
I was single and
I still think that. I still think that. Yeah, because you can't.
It's easy for people to say, oh, don't worry if he loves you, but not everyone finds their true love, or what if, you know, every 100%. Situation is different. And that was, I think, the same thing for me. It was being single at the time. It's the unknown that is worse, even though it's never happened, if that makes sense.
I have to think about what someone that doesn't exist thinks before myself. I want this, and that's crazy. That's our culture speaking as well.
That's our culture. Totally our culture. Like for me, it was like, right, so I was already 36 when I got diagnosed, and I wasn't with anybody, so that's already a cross. Like, she's old, she's not with anyone. And then it was like, right, so now she's obviously gonna go through cancer. Then she's had fertility treatment, so she's not gonna be able to, can't have a baby properly, which is this. So it was literally like, in my head, it was like, right, cross. The crosses were getting longer, and sadly in our culture, that's what it is. It's a tick and a cross. They're the boxes that we have to go through in order to, like, oh well, you know, she's not good enough to marry because of this and this. And that's 100%. And do you know what? It still goes through my head, like, every day. Like, at some point I'm thinking, shit, do you know what? Am I ever going to find that person? Because there's so many things. And that's the culture embedded into my head. Like, however much you try and come out of it, and you're like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, this is about me, and that's it.
I think that's the mental health, where it's easy to say it's okay, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But if you're not in someone's head, for whatever reason, they're thinking. Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing.
100%. And it's that, I think that is the hardest thing to, for me anyway, that has on the other end of it. That's why I found that after, you know, getting the all clear on whatever it is, like, other than the side effects, which are still going on, I think mentally that's been the hardest. I'm finding now way harder than I found going through my treatment, because now I'm on the other side.
I'm exactly the same. And I think with the PTSD and depression, it's so hard to explain, because you could even be in a good position but bad health, but to someone else that's still a miracle, which it is, but then it doesn't then they're not taking into, like, your mental health or how you're feeling, that you're alive. But you're more than just being alive. You want that when you're, you know, a person. So
it'd be normal.
But the whole cancer process goes by so quickly that you're just like on the go, right? So I'm still going through. I'm waiting for my stem cell, but I'm scared about the other end, because I've been there before, where it's like you're dropped.
dropped. That's
Drop
it.
the highest building.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
like
What do I do?
What do I do?
What do I do?
Your life's never going to be as it was before, not at all. And you're dealing with all these mental health issues, and you're trying to navigate, and it's difficult because cancer's also kind of like a blanket because you're going through it. But now it's like you're out of cancer, so what's the problem?
So, what's the issue? Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So you're out of cancer. What's the issue? And I was thinking even today, like I really wanted to write like another Instagram blog because I haven't written one for a long time. With this whole COVID-19, I've been a bit like, you know, I've had enough. You know, like it's been a bit like, whoa. But like that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, you know, you've been dropped, and everyone's like, well, you've had the cancer now. You're out the other side. Almost like what you're moaning about. I mean, I don't tell people so much, like whatever. I like to just write about it because it makes me feel like easier when someone's not commenting on what I have to say. But like that's what it feels like. That right? Well, what? Come on, you're out cancer now. Like move on. It's done. Right next. And it's like no. Yeah. It's like no. Like it's not. That's.
Also, do you find it like a good release? Like sometimes I write things and like you say, I don't mind if people don't write it, but sometimes it's like I need to get that out if that makes sense. And then it's good to see more and more. The whole reason why I started is even though I didn't get the choice to preserve my fertility, like you said, that makes you go, you know, like you overthink it. And I thought I couldn't let someone else go through that and think like I'm thinking, because it takes like part of most of your life, the way you think, you know, even though sometimes, like you say, you're okay. And then other times it could be very hard for no reason. You just kind of like, you know, if that makes sense, you know, when it comes and you don't. So, and I can be around children, but at the same time, there's other times that are very hard.
Sometimes you just get yourself staring at children thinking, will that be me? Or looking at family, will that be me? You know? And it is a lot of the unknown. For me, when I was freezing my eggs, I'm not even in the position to have children. I didn't want to have children at that time, but I had to make that decision. I wasn't with someone. So now it's like in the future when I am, say, ready, will I be able to have kids, even if I've frozen it? Will they be good eggs, you know? It's not 100%.
And my thing about what you just said,
there still be
is you know, when like what you just said, how it was so important to you. That's what I'm trying to get across. That I've seen articles about stage 4 cancer and they wanted a child or fertility, and that's their choice. And that's where I think it shouldn't matter what the next person does. But I know people put a lot of why are you thinking this, or why do you want that, or you're like this, so you shouldn't have a child. But to me it's like, well, it's not my body, it's their body. If they want to do that, that's their choice. But also
live
how important it is about whether I was single in a relationship. I just knew it was important in having that choice. That makes sense. So I think when people say, well, there's not even a high chance, but then you do the hair where you freeze it and they say that isn't always going to go. And that's where I think like it's easy to put fertility down, but other things not as much. That makes sense.
But people have car insurance, they have house insurance.
Exactly. Why would you?
That doesn't mean that your house is going to burn down tomorrow.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly. You put all those things in place. Why shouldn't you put something like this in place? Like
things, if you think about it.
100%. So true.
And also, I think someone else said this, but do you think also a part of it is, I know this is going to sound really like down, but I don't think they thought I was going to survive, or that because they diagnosed me late, so they didn't want to probably give me my fertility. But do you think they kind of put us down where they don't have much hope for us? So they're more, even if there is time, they're less inclined to push it or say, do you want it to save your fertility? I don't know if that's not for everyone, but
maybe for some people, I don't know. But for me, it was more not that I don't think that they look at a person as a person, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Like it's just like, this is the situation, this is what we got to do, right, let's do this. They don't think about, well, we're gonna have to wait 3 or 4 weeks for the results, we're gonna have to do this. They don't put those kind of things in place. They just think, right, we're gonna do this and this. They don't, like, you know, they looking at your life. I don't think they think like, right, life expectancy, not life expectancy. It's like this is what we're gonna do, that's it.
A good example of that is, as nice as my oncologist was, and I'm grateful for saving my life, things like that, she's done really great, you know, things. But the only thing is the fertility that I'm a bit low. But I even got her a gift for her child when not long after my fertility of not saving it for me, and she didn't even click. Actually, that's as important for Becki as it is for me. I think one
luxury for us, but it's a given for everyone else.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think a few bad comments. I don't know if you got it, but one was you can work in a school with children, and the other was you can adopt. But I was like, why can't you just deal with the feelings a person has, and then if I ask for suggestions of how to have a child,
and it will be open to you.
That's 100%. Exactly. Like that's another thing which, like, I think it's those really random comments, but they do affect you. Like my sister's one said to me, and she said to me all the time, and I know it's coming from a really good place, because her kids are like my kids. Like I do treat them like my kids. Like, you know, I love them, they love me, and like, you know, like so much they never want to go home. But the bottom line is, she said, oh, you know, like, don't worry, my kids are like your kids, yeah. And then like on another occasion, she'd be like, you know, oh, so I'll say, oh, let's do something as a group, or let's go out somewhere. And then it's like, no, because we want to spend it like as, not in a rude way, but like, you know, we want to spend it as a family. And then you just like, but she's not doing it on purpose, and you know that she's not doing it on purpose. Reality, it's fine. But that is the reality. That is the reality. That is her family.
There'll always be that.
100%. They're like, you know, and that's the difference. And that's why when people say to you, oh, you can adopt, or, you know, my kids are your kids, and all that kind of stuff, that's great. Yeah. But the reality is that's not the truth, and it's never going to be. And it's nicely and reassuring for about 2 seconds, but you know, it's not the truth, and that's what we have to accept. But nobody really gets that in their head. They don't really get it.
I just thought they probably just feel very helpless, because what can you
do? That's it, and that's what I mean. It's not their fault.
Listen, then
that's it. Exactly, that's it. And it's hard for them because they're not in our position, so they don't know. They just feel like, like you said, helpless.
It's like a grip. But also 100%. With the NHS, which I don't get, is the fact that they obviously let us freeze our eggs. Yeah. But on the other side, when it's actually the second bit of the IVF treatment, we have to pay.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I've got no energy, but if I could do it with lots of people who were passionate like yourself and other people, or just an organisation,
let's do it.
In my opinion, if we're, you know how sometimes if you're a cancer patient, you get certain medication free if it affects you. Well, fertility affects you because it caused infertility. So why am I getting bowel tablets but can't get fertility treatment?
It's like, why would you do the first bit without the second bit?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Apparently, taking any medication or stuff like that, you just had to be affected post-cancer. So technically, infertility, you got affected, because I always said to someone, the radiotherapy through my pelvis. So you give me the tablets for the bowels, but you're having a go for me because it's in the same place, but for fertility, it just doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. But that's why, you know, my nurse, I got sent. So when I was having the fertility, my surgeon must have sent people to fertility so few times. He sent me to the wrong hospital. So when I went to the hospital, the lady was like, right, this, and then we went through this stuff, and she was like, oh, by the way, different hospitals, some hospitals don't fund fertility treatment.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I found really bad. There's like an exceptional funding, but if you don't know about it and they don't offer it, sometimes I find they do it too late. So there's not enough time to get the funding for the treatment that needs to be to communities and diverse communities. Because I know when I ask for people to do things, I know it can be very hard. Some want to, but you can, if you really try, you can, you know, look around and ask people in different communities, what do you think about X, Y, Z? Or like you said about how when you feature in
that whole NHS thing.
Say again, sorry? Oh yeah, you should. I would definitely, if I could split the work with people, I am more than happy, because that was one thing I wanted to do.
We so should. It's so important. We so should.
And I think when you said about cancer and you have to pay, and I think you do sometimes, like for some fertility to be preserved, they shouldn't be doing it now, but if you had a partner, you had a child, they wouldn't give it to you, the fertility preservation. If you were overweight, a certain weight, they wouldn't. If, you know, there were certain things, and they weren't meant to be using that criteria. And then I think I found on the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, they said for fertility treatment like IVF, it's among BME communities, the uptake is quite low. But it makes you wonder, are they actually advertising it, or does that make sense?
Yes, because so just to clear up, even on the other end, when you're ready to have children, having done the first bit of the process, I think the NHS will only fund you if there's actually a problem unrelated to cancer.
Okay, yeah.
So if your partner is infertile, or if you are just unrelated to cancer, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense, because I've frozen my egg for cancer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It doesn't. I'm not allowed to have kids.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It doesn't
I'll
make
have
sense
to look
at
into
all.
that just to be 100%, because I do think it changes the different areas.
Yeah, I think it does. You know, when I spoke, so basically, because I got sent to the wrong hospital, when I got sent to King's, the right hospital in the end, guys, she told me, she said, oh, well, we've actually, it's only been agreed that in the past couple of years, funding for us to actually freeze our eggs in the first place. Like, she was like, a couple of years ago, this wasn't even available. You couldn't even freeze your eggs. And then she was like, because they do, I think it's their biggest, the biggest fertility stuff is guys. Like, they work to do the research and all that kind of stuff, don't they? So we're working towards trying to get it free afterwards as well.
Yeah, that's the thing I think we should put in a petition if we do one, because they want you to pay, after a certain amount, you have it free. They want you to pay for the storage. And I don't think that's right. Because they make out like you can save it for imaginary up to 55 years as a cancer patient. They don't tell you for some of that you might have to pay. So I think it's £300 a month. Some people say.
She said up to for 10 years they keep it for free, and then after that it's like a couple of £100 a month.
But if you're young, or
I thought you can. They kept telling me you could extend it. You could keep extending it.
I think they say you can. I think they started doing that, saying you can extend it. But my worry is if fertility in general is different in each CCG and area, I think that's why with the petition it'd be like saying you want it to be natural
across the board, like for everybody.
Yeah, so everyone is on the same page. I don't think, why should someone suffer who's up from here and then someone down here gets it?
Demographics aren't right. It's not fair. But we have the same with coronavirus, but the demographic really does affect it. But I think it goes down to each trust, because each trust can only afford so much.
Yeah.
For it to be across the board. No one should be more privileged.
Yeah.
With their body.
And I remember seeing, I don't know for men, but for statistics, I think Manchester did a study, St Mary's, and they said only 4% of cancer patients preserve their fertility. So even if you had that much, that isn't that much really.
It isn't. Do you know, in my chemo ward, and in the breast clinic part, both the receptionist at the breast clinic and at the chemo ward, the nurse was saying to me that I was the first person out of like the people that they had seen that had actually preserved her eggs. And I was like, but there's so many people come in and out of that place like all the time. I was the first person, and so much so that the receptionist's daughter was I think she was at 28 or 29 and get pregnant for a long time, so she was now going through fertility treatment. And so we were like, we'd talk about it, but she was like, there's nobody else here who's had the fertility treatment, so the percentage is very low.
And that's why I don't think it's fair that
maybe it goes down to the doctors and what they're saying. But
I think if you think about it, say you did have the time like I did, if they thought, like with me, they delayed me because they missed something, so they're worried, oh my god, she might die just because we missed it, or we did everything right, but this person's really ill and might die. Even if there's time, I think, not for everyone, but for some, I do think it's that mentality of you've got to have it straight away, or but you've got say if you had 3 weeks or 2 weeks before you had your treatment, I can understand if you didn't have that time, but I get some people then realizing, I think, clocking on that they did have the time, and then I feel bad because it's like,
they weren't able
portrayed
to do
a certain way sometimes, I think.
And I also think it's a lack of education of what the process entails, because when I heard about it, I thought, wow, that's daunting. How am I going to do that? But when I actually came around to doing it, it was a really okay process.
Pretty like 100%.
And I was like, oh wow, it's very invasive when they'll actually do the procedure, but you're obviously on anaesthetic. And I was like, wow, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I think the
think that was-
scaremongering is like big.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
do
you know
over-
what? When I had it, they had so when they sent me to the wrong hospital to the other side of London, and then afterwards, what I did, I just remember one of the breast cancer nurses I had, she was quite like la, 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 like that, you know, like very chilled about everything. Whereas the other nurse was very much like, listen, if you want something done, you have to call, you have to push, because even if like it means that you call 100
they're the
times,
kinds of ones I like.
yeah, that's what you need. And I needed her, because I can be very like, listen, sort it out. But I didn't know that that's what I would have to do, because I'm not sick. Like, you would think that people just go, okay, she's sick, like, let's get this sorted. It wasn't like, I didn't think I'd have to do that. Anyway, when I got sent to the wrong hospital, the fertility doctor sat in front of me and she was like, we don't have funding for you. Your GP surgery is out of our postcode.
Yeah, that's
so
the thing I hate.
We can't do this for you.
Yeah.
We can't do this for you, and so you might not be able to have fertility treatment. I was just like,
yeah, that is crazy.
And she was so cold. I just burst into tears. I was like, what? So then I went home, and because then I had decided that I wanted fertility treatment, I couldn't get through to my nurses. My doctors were God knows where. So then I got onto Google, and I Googled what hospital came under my GP postcode, blah, blah, blah. And I called guys, and I called them 100 times that same day. And I said, this is the problem. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. And lucky for me, I met somebody on the other side of the line who was like, he really totally understood. So he called the other hospital, got all my paperwork across. And by day 3, I was in, guys, having my treatment done. Otherwise, it would have wasted like how long in the NHS? A couple of weeks. And then I would have lost my window of opportunity.
Yeah, and I've heard that before, where they don't tell you that, say if your GP doesn't do the funding, your hospital can, in their area, can do it on behalf of you if they fund it. And I think someone that I knew said, yeah, my doctor was great, I got funding and I couldn't get it at my GP or something like that. I got it in the hospital postcode. It was my doctor who didn't give me the fertility thing. And I'm thinking that just shows you that when they do one thing to one patient, even if they don't mean it, the next one thinks they're a god, the first one thinks I'm a guinea pig, and it just makes me realise, like,
because that worries me about how much they're keeping from me.
Yeah, 100%.
And
it is a worry.
Yeah, because they should be treating everyone equally. Because everyone
equally.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Exactly. You can't make a decision on someone else's behalf.
I think we were all single, were we, when we were around fertility? I think that plays a part. Like, they judge you. I'm sure they do, because I had someone smiley say, do you have a partner? And I'm sure that's to check on a tick list. Is she having the treatment, or
does she need it? Exactly. That's it. And it's like, what's that got to do with anything? Like, it's got nothing to do with anything, because I'm single, I don't want to have children.
And I'm sure they dropped that when they say, probably back in the past when they didn't want to pay for it, maybe, where does your partner have a child? Because if they did, that would be one thing. You couldn't get it. You couldn't get it even if you were a cancer patient sometimes. But I'm hoping it's getting better. But I just think there needs to be like someone who is a professional that kind of goes into these charities and support groups and picks up, because I think there's so many diverse opinions.
And it makes me wonder as well. And it makes me wonder that the money that they save on the funding that they've been given to have fertility treatment, they add it towards something else. Like, then it just makes you wonder, like, is there a reason that you're not giving the fertility treatment, you're not promoting, you're not telling everybody as much as you should be, because you want to use it at the end of the year, you want to use it for something else. Yeah.
And I also, when you see, like, I don't try to read them often, but you see negative comments, usually they don't take the funding out. They all, each like department has a pot of money. So you're not taking it from cancer patients directly. You're not taking it from, and that's where I think they don't make it clear, and then it makes it look like, oh, it's a waste of money. At least they're alive. Why do they want this as well? Or they should pay for it. And I was like, well, if my doctor had made it clear that I did have time, I would have gone private, even if I had to owe money. And it's just that thing that they don't make you aware. And I think if other people are aware of this, I remember this other couple where they're really nice, but they're very they would say nothing bad about an experience they had in the NHS. And I said, look, you can have a good experience, but doesn't mean the negative one is the main, or, that they're good what they do, but you have to also say the negative things. But they didn't, privately told me that they had to go above the doctor privately because there wasn't enough time, or they didn't do it properly. and it just makes you think all the stories not being told. You know, you think, oh, I had a great experience, but not saying actually I had to go private because it wasn't being done properly.
Because it wasn't the best experience. Exactly.
I'm private, and I always have been. But my situation has still been similar, as I've told you guys. Like, it's more like a tick box. I don't really have that much information. And just going back to last year, my mental health was really bad because I wasn't getting, my cancer was spreading. I wasn't responding. And only when my consultant told me results and I bawled my eyes out, he was like, okay, have you thought about seeing a therapist? And I was like, I've been seeing one since September. Nice of you to ask.
Like 10 years. Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing? Like, what are you
100%. It's like I said, they don't see past those boxes. They don't see past, this is our duty, we've got to get them the treatment, this is what we've got to do. And they don't see as humans, or like with people, like, you know, like how, that's why it just blows my mind how sometimes these people do become doctors and stuff. Even the coldness and with what they say sometimes, it's like, whoa.
Because we're not denying they do great work, like most of the time, but there is a small percentage of things that aren't, you know, shiny, that they're not doing right. Or
100%. Like with me, like I've had like if I was to go back, there's like I've had, and they've been amazing with me. Like I can't complain. Like you know, that much. They have been absolutely amazing, and with, you know, how quick they did everything and all that kind of stuff. But there have been problems, and unless, you know, we speak about those problems, unless we address them and kind of like make them more public, they will continue to happen.
Because I think
it's only for like improvement.
During these 10 years, before the earlier years, people used to say, why are you complaining, or you can't say something negative, even if it's true, because it might make the NHS look bad. But my point was, I'm not saying I didn't have great care for everything else, but just like you say, and like I know it's a bit off topic, but like with Black Lives Matters, if we all just stood by and said, don't worry about it, it's just it's that kind of thing where people are putting you down to not say this is not right. Or
that goes back to the whole, you can appreciate things, but at the same time, I don't know, it might be a weird comparison, but you know, when you can compliment someone's beauty without feeling bad for it, or it's not putting you down, like you're able to do both, you know, you don't have
that's it. 100%. It doesn't have to be 100% this way, 100% that way. And also, like, even as humans, like, you know, we you know, you can do something and maybe you've done it really well, but there's always space for improvement. There's always like, we should do like, you know, exactly. And if we speak about those experiences, we should be able to do that. You know, my dad is a prime example of not talking about like the NHS in any way, shape or form badly. My dad lost his leg like 40 odd years ago, and they made like about 3 or 4 mistakes when they did his operation. They even gave him the wrong blood transfusion, and he still goes to the same hospital, they take care of him. Don't get me wrong, they are the best, they take care of him, but ultimately they made 2 major mistakes. They cut his leg wrong, and then they gave him the wrong blood transfusion. It's like years later, I was like, you know, you should have done this, you should have done this. He's like, no, but they take really good care of me and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, but Dad, you don't understand. They take good care of you. I appreciate that. He's been sick because of it since.
I now view doctors and nurses, they're just humans, really.
And that's exactly what it is.
And at the beginning, before all of this, I'd be like, oh, they're very elite, they have so much knowledge, they're like superhumans, right? Heroes, as media likes to say. But they're just humans, literally.
And I think I am so grateful, and I think they do a great job. But my thing is, if you make anyone into a God's kind of complex, you can't criticize them. Like any organization, like if you can't criticize them, then bad things are going to keep happening. Or even if it's the management, or, you know, other things. I think that's where, I think another doctor actually said, you shouldn't always make them into godlike, because then it's not fair on them either, because they can't, they're human, they can't, you know, can't save everyone. And as long as it's not a really bad mistake, I have no problem. Like, obviously you can't save everyone and things like that. But I think if it's something, especially negligent, why would you
not? Exactly.
We don't really know much ourselves, so we really trust the doctors and have all the answers.
Exactly, that's it.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes I've found that they just don't, so they have to go and interact with other doctors, with their MDTs. They have to figure things out, which is quite eye-opening.
And I think the last thing, there was some research articles that I found. It was just, I think I have heard before about how certain Asian communities have higher depression in general than kind of white counterparts. But I'm not sure if it says IVF and fertility treatment uptake is lower in South Asian communities. Out of all these kind of research things, they never really go into the community. They do the research study. That's how I feel, whoever it's about.
Yeah.
But they never really approach the person, and then they kind of leave them and go on to the next study, if that makes sense. So do you think
it's just for the stats
to help not make it as much a taboo? Because as the older generations aren't here, isn't it more important to speak out, you know, for younger ones?
Yeah, 100% it is. It's really, really important. And the more you do it and the more you promote it is the only way that that's going to happen, because stuff like what we were saying earlier is inbred in you, isn't it? It's like, it's, you know, you've learned as you grow up to not speak about these things and stuff like that, because just, you know, things which we now know are detrimental to our health in our I know in my culture is just normal, like to say, so, you know, as you're growing up and to say to someone, oh, you know, you've put on weight, you're looking fat, no one's going to marry
that's exactly
you,
in my Irish one.
That's quite normal.
I hate it.
you're so skinny, never will want to marry you.
Yeah, exactly. It's always about that though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's always about that. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like taboos reverse.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're fortunate to have social media because we're able to, we feel alone and we're able to connect with other people. Okay, there are other people that go through this as well. It's not just me.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's been really helpful. I find it really helpful. Really
you find things like the only kind of two that I'm aware of, but I know there are some fertility groups to do with being Asian just for that kind of group, but they're not as kind of out there. But did you find, like, shout out to Leanne for like Black Women Rising, but also BME Cancer Support? Do you feel like when you did your Instagram post that people were talking more to you or reaching out, if that makes sense?
I've had like loads of people reach out to me, like just from the community and stuff, and it's not, and do you know the weirdest thing is, not all about cancer. It's not all been about like, oh, you know, I'm going through this. Lots of it has, I'm going through this, like I can't talk to, there are people who are in their household, they can't talk to anybody, we're not allowed to tell anybody, you know, those kind of things, and then they'll talk to me and then they'll, you know, help hopefully. But there are people who are like going through domestic violence. There are people who are going through like really things which are completely different to cancer, but they're stuck in a box and they can't talk to anybody. That sort of thing, which shocked me, because I would never have expected it, and nor did I think that I'd be reaching out to, you know, people who are going through all that, because you know, obviously that's not the experience I've had. But I think it's just the ability to be able to speak to anybody who's talking about something which generally as a community we tend to not talk about, means that they might be able to understand other stuff as well. And I think sometimes
even though it might not feel appropriate, like you're not the same illness or you're not this or that, I do think like it is like you know, when I'm in pain, I'm isolated, so if I don't kind of wake up most of the time, you don't want to go online and be like muttering, or but you also, if you're too isolated, like whether it's pain or another reason, the same where if it's a different issue, people want someone to just let it out to.
Exactly.
Even though it was a different subject, I do think that it maybe shows that mental health, even services are as good as they can be, sometimes if you don't find the right person who gets you, it's just like you're dragging along their issue, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And like some people, like it's a connection thing, isn't it? Like some people, like sometimes you just connect with people, like, oh look, they're having a great day, but the next day they're having a rubbish day. Like that's how I feel sometimes, and I felt like I was a bit silly for feeling like that, but I'm glad that someone else is feeling like that. I think it's quite a connection thing.
It's nice because feelings kind of they're quite valid at that point. Which I feel like us humans want and need at times, or be like, okay, I understand that as well. But I think like just for you, I think your name is Seek versus Cancer. I think that already kind of opens up a topic, not just cancer based, but you know that you're of this background, you're going through this, that is a battle, you know?
Yeah.
Battle. So people are able to be like, okay, I'm also Sikh, for instance, and I'm going through another battle. That's also, because you've already acknowledged that, and so have they, so that already
there's already a link there.
Can I ask, I read a little bit, but is the Punjab kind of like Northern Ireland, where you have people from the same area but it could be totally different religions, if that makes sense, cultures? So like for parts of the Punjab you could have Sikhs, but you could also have people from another religion like Hindus, or does that make sense?
India generally overall is a very mixed, isn't it? Like you get different religions live in all different parts of India, but it's like Pakistanis who live in Punjab, and it's quite mixed. As far as I know, it's quite mixed.
Yeah, because I remember I think I was reading your article Instagram, but also about the 1984, and it's kind of similar to Irish history, where you've got people who are literally alike, just religion or something slightly different, and so I can totally understand that culture does play a big part, because you grow up with it and you're influenced by it. So like Raveen said, I think that your name is quite nice, because also for me, I was interested to know like what was your experience like for XYZ, and then so I think it's nice on Instagram to see, I think, variety. I think back when 2008 there wasn't that. So I couldn't connect to people who had the same personality to me. So then you feel alone or isolated. And then, like you said, it's okay to have depression. You're okay with it. But when people make you feel like it's something odd or you shouldn't have it,
that's when there's
a problem. Then you realise, But when you realise actually it's a normal thing to a bad thing that happened, and lots of people sometimes get it, it makes you realise it's not as bad than if you hid it from someone and kind of suppressed it.
Yeah, you feel more a part of like everybody else. You feel like more, you're relatable to other people, because like, it's just you're not alone, and I think that's what it is. Like, and that's what Instagram and all these kind of like platforms give you the opportunity to say you're just not alone. There are other people out there going through.
That's also a constant struggle, I think, through everything that we go through in life, cancer or not. We're always just trying to reaffirm that it's not just us. And it's normal to go through these. Like, we are normal. We are going through normal things in life, and that's okay. And knowing that, like, when our moods get really down, we're like, oh, is this me? Do I have a problem? Like, but it's normal. It's just all that acceptance. Which
exactly. That's it.
And I think before we end, if I just quickly ask, how was it for your immediate family? Because I know it's hard for my mum, and when you have someone who's with you majority of the time to see what you go through, did they find when they realized fertility was a big thing to you, did they feel it was hard, because there's only so much family can do, if that makes sense?
And for me, like, it was a case of my mum didn't really get it at the beginning. Like, she didn't really get it, and it became a point where I was like, we just want you to get better, fertility or not fertility. It was really, for them, it wasn't a big thing. Like, obviously, like now, I'm out the other side, and then like, the whole kids thing, they want me to get married and have children and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, it was just that you just get better. And I just remember being in Brent Cross in a shopping centre one day, and me explaining to my mum exactly what was happening and what was going on. And she was like, and at that point, you could see that, okay, fine. It was a bit shocking to her, because she didn't really understand at the beginning. But afterwards, it was very much a case of, don't worry about that, just get better. Like, that's all it was about. Like, they didn't say very much. And I think that was the general, the kind of general gist of the whole family.
Is that more, not, I don't know if just as much language, but is it because she's from the generation where culturally you didn't really, like my grandmother, you don't speak about your health problems, especially to other people, let alone, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it was that we definitely don't speak about like issues and stuff like that. Like, I mean, we do now in my house, because I've got a big mouth.
That's good,
but no, generally no, we don't. But I think it was more the language barrier, because my mum's like proper, you know, she worked at home, she sewed clothes at home, so she didn't really like spend a lot of time out working. So, you know, her English isn't great. So to explain to her, you have to sit down and you have to really explain to her. And when you're going through that yourself and you're trying to get your head around it, sometimes it becomes quite difficult to then explain to somebody else like what it is. I think that's what it was.
I know there are groups out there specifically, but maybe there should be something also when there are charities out there and support groups for the family as well, because it would help understand, and maybe in a way that isn't, you know, more kind of for each person. You need a certain way to tell someone or
explain to them.
Because different people require different things. But Macmillan nurses are quite good because they're open to anyone and everyone. Because just generally your family feel it more than you probably do, because I
definitely agree
of helplessness and whatnot, and 100%. You're just going through it all, right? So it's good. And I've also said to my mum, like, maybe you should go to therapy. And I think also that generation of people don't want to they don't want to talk about their feelings, and I think they're taught whilst growing up not to. So they've reached that barrier, and with the whole language barrier, because my mum's also from India. How much can she really communicate with someone?
Exactly.
Anyone at the time, and when she went looking for things around that time, most of them were kind of older carers and older people. And as nice as that is, it's the same thing, that if you don't find your tribe or someone to speak to, and I think when we went to like
I think I have that as well, being well, I was 23 at the time, and now being 25, I'm still trying to search for people. Like, even a few weeks ago, I was frantically searching for people that are my age, because on all these forums, these people are like 60, 70. They're not going through the like same emotions that I'm going through when I'm thinking about career, when I'm thinking about settling down. Like, career's major in my 20s, in your 30s. And
you know, that big thing, before I forget, that obviously our age, fertility, and because it's important to us, like my dad sadly died of cancer, but he was 57, he'd already had children. So obviously fertility and people at that age and older, it's not a big thing. And so when I was in those groups, you didn't really get that much support because it wasn't a thing for them. And I think that's the hard thing as well, when until more recently, when they had younger cancer groups and things, no one, you know, if the majority were older, they're not going to understand where you're coming from.
100%, totally, because they've already had their children, so they're like, it's fine because I've had my children. And I think that's one of the things I found really, really difficult. And people who are like saying, oh, well, I don't need, you know, I've already had my children, even in these groups and stuff, oh, that's fine, you know, it wasn't discussed very much because I've had my children. It's just like, that's all well and true, but I haven't. So and
I think that's the hard thing of, I'm one of those people where I try to not go on the groups all the time, because I think a triggered person then triggers someone else, if that makes sense, without realizing. And that's something I would never want to do. And I think when you have subjects like that, when people, it's not like it coming from a bad place, but it's affecting you emotionally. You have to start coming back away from certain groups.
Back from it.
And you also need to be able to not be resentful, which is very common with cancer, just compared to like the average person, or someone that's probably in remission 20 years on and they've got a family and stuff. And it's a very normal place to be, but you also need to stop yourself from being so bitter.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
It's something to do.
Like this is what it is, and this is what we are in now, and to live with that, like, it's fine, you know, it's one step at a time, whatever. It's true, because sometimes you can become like, oh my god, but like, you know, it's like silly little things like hair growth. Like I would look at like some people's pictures and stuff, and I was like, you know what, 6 months in or whatever, they've had hair like this, and mine's like a year and 6 months.
I think mine took a long time.
Like, where's my hair?
And I think that's the just coming back to where people don't really not really want to talk about it, but they don't really go into mental health or just emotions about, I feel about this because I lost my hair, or I feel like this because of fertility. I think my bugbear was, it's all great being positive and doing good things and for your mental health, which I'm all for, but if you, in a way, it also puts down the people who are suffering, if that makes sense. Because if you are portraying that everything has to be positive and stuff, it's like that thing where we said, when you have to go through normal emotions of you know, like depression or sadness or guilt or the loss or, you know, resentment already, but you're not putting it on anyone, but you're dealing with it. When you hear positive, that used to like make me think, like,
it gets a bit
can't
like,
there just be a thing where also you're just trying to get through each day on the bad times, and on the good times you're going for that positive kind of thing.
Yeah, you're indirectly dictating how a person should feel, and I think
exactly,
a very threatening position to be in.
Because I think it's portraying 24/7, and to me, I used to say this to a psychologist, that's impossible. I mean, even if you don't have cancer, you're not happy the whole time, so then you start blaming yourself.
And you start feeling like, well, should I be positive, like, well, I'm not feeling positive, but how am I supposed to be, like, it sends you into like a turmoil, doesn't it? Like,
but just naturally we go through waves, like, and my therapist really good. She always reminds me that I'll be feeling how I do with and without cancer. And when I talk to my friends, they're still having the same fears that I have in terms of careers and stuff, and I'm like, I'd still be feeling this way. And it's
it's not cancer, it's just because that's life. It's just
cancer like something else, but I'm trying to like take it away from things, because right now with the current climate, it's not really affecting me as it would otherwise, because everyone else is really you know, we're kind of going through the wave, so that's reassuring in a weird way. But it's very easy, it's very nice to be mindful about it's not just cancer's not
exactly
up,
and I think the same kind of thing where, because my dad was obviously terminal and then died, I think obviously they're in survival mode, and I think we need to not be too harsh on ourselves. If, like, obviously for anyone, you're scared you're going to die near that time, and then you kind of at one point accept it, but he was like, you're in remission kind of thing, and he didn't mean it, but it's that thing of we all have to kind of what we say to each other, even if we didn't mean it, or, you know, the person's upset, to, you know, take a breath and try and do better the next time. And like, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but like, you know, if you're in remission and you're complaining about depression and someone might be terminal, they're going to find it hard to listen to you. And then but then my thing is, each person, you have to look after your own mental health, and the same with
exactly
if someone's triggering you, or, you know, they don't mean it, but
everything is relative, right? Exactly, everything is relative to the individual, and I think that's what, like, we as you know, a community or whatever, we have to just accept that everything is relative, and something which, like, it's like, oh, I'm going through this, but that's someone else's issue, and that's what's bothering them, and that's what's affecting them. That's just natural, and that's the way it is. Like, they're not going to be ever be able to understand what you're going through, because they're not going through that.
And I think that's the one thing I wanted to say, whoever it is and whatever stage, that, you know, it's hard to be a human and just kind of like not say the wrong thing all the time or upset someone, but to not take it too personal, and then just kind of wipe the slate clean and then start again tomorrow, that kind of thing. I think because it's so hard, because everyone is suffering, but in different ways, and no one wants to upset anyone.
No one's going through an ideal situation, because I can be like, I can't wait to not have treatment anymore, I can't wait to be in remission. But there's also so much that you both are dealing with on the other side. Like,
that's it.
It's ideal. It's ideal for me now, but once I get to that, I'm going to be like, oh, like I was in a better position, but that's just life.
I think even though we all do it as humans,
with everything.
I think the focusing on others sometimes puts you off course on what you're doing yourself. If you focus too much on what XYZ person is doing, maybe, for all I know, like, you could have been sleeping for 4 hours before you talk to me. I'm not going to know that. And I think that's the thing we need to remember, that when we put pictures up or say things, we might not have been great for days or months, and then all of a sudden, and I think it's hard on social media to sometimes think, you know, XYZ looks perfect all the time, but they could have been sleeping most of the day, if that makes sense. Or
It's important to be grateful, and understand that with you being grateful, it's not affecting someone else, it's not you.
That's the bit I like, that
being very proud, because you just be with yourself and be, I'm grateful that I'm in remission, because that is something to be grateful for. You know, it's good health up this point, but that doesn't mean that you're being very proud about it or anything. But I think it's important to just, like, protect yourself.
Thanks again to Raveen and Kiren taking part in this first episode. I really appreciate all your support, and Raveen for being a co-host as well. Please follow their links where they're in different medias. Please subscribe, share, and like, as it helps us reach much more people and hopefully get seen in podcast platforms as well as many other platforms. I appreciate all your support, everyone, and I hope you look forward to the next episode coming very soon. Take care. Bye.